Hey everyone, welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host, Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is Shivang Dave. Shivang, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me, Nitin Bhai.
Pleasure to have you here. So let's start with who is Shivang?
That's an interesting question. So I guess the simple answer is I'm just a kid from Sacramento, born to Indian parents and a good mix of Indian and American culture. I guess at another level, I'm a bioengineer, translational medicine researcher, and social impact entrepreneur. And at another level, I'm a three-time medical device entrepreneur who's now CEO and co-founder of PlenOptika.
So many layers to peel off over there, Shivang. And knowing you, having known you for a while now, lots to hear, lots to learn from you. Now, let's start with what is PlenOptika? Tell us about the impact, the scale of operations, and a little bit of the vision.
Yep. So PlenOptika makes medical devices and digital health technologies that transform and improve access to vision exams and eyeglasses globally. Why do we do that? It's because if you look at different numbers, like from the World Health Organization, you'll find that there are between 1.1 and 2.5 billion people worldwide who don't have the glasses they need. Mm-hmm. Therefore, they don't have the vision correction they need, which impacts education, economic productivity, quality of life. It's now shown to affect roadside safety and traffic accidents, mental health, falls for the elderly. In fact, it impacts directly 7 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Wow. And we stumbled upon this problem when we were research fellows in a program called the Madrid, MIT, and Vision Consortium between the government of Madrid and MIT. Mm-hmm. And our task was to identify large-scale unmet medical needs and to really understand the different barriers that make these needs persist, from a technology landscape side to a clinical practice side, economics, regulatory. And once you've kind of mapped out that space for 6 to 10 months and you really work on it, then you can really figure out what your clinical impact statement is, and you can figure out what technology you need to build to get there. And so for us, we looked at this big global problem. And we said, it must be because the eyeglasses are so expensive. Mm-hmm. Usually that's what we think, because in the US, they're very expensive. Right. And then when you look in low and middle income countries, $5 prescription glasses are readily available. Mm-hmm. The problem is an access problem. People don't have access to the eye care professional because there's just not enough of them. The world needs something like a couple 100,000 to 1 million more optometrists and ophthalmologists. And it also needs 1 million more access points where people can get access to glasses and try them on and test them. Mm-hmm. And we knew, I have 3 other co-founders, and we knew 4 guys in Cambridge, Massachusetts, were not going to be able to scale up 1 million new doctors. The governments in the world have been really trying. They've been trying new innovative ways of eye care delivery, of scaling up these professionals, but we're still short. And so we thought, hey, let's look at what technologies could make a doctor more efficient. And then eventually if we can make those technologies portable and usable outside of clinical settings, those doctors could become more efficient in these global health, public health settings. And then we thought, if we make these technologies really accurate and easy to use, then technicians and community health workers and nurses and school teachers can use this technology to triage the simpler patients, and the more complicated patients with more complicated eye diseases can be funneled up to the limited number of eye doctors and get the full-blown treatment. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of gives you a sense of how we started and where we're going. We're really passionate about being biomedical engineers, and biomedical engineering is all about having a health impact. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a very, when we stumbled upon the problem, it was really interesting because sometimes, or most times as a biomedical engineer, you can work on stuff that affects people in high income countries, really expensive technologies and surgical tools or cancer drugs and things like that. Things that take a long time to develop and a lot of money to scale up. And then that limits where it's deployed. And this was an opportunity where we saw in a couple-year timeline, we could launch a product that could be used around the world and have impact. And this is not just a global health problem. There's something like 30 million Americans who live in eye care deserts and don't have access to eye care. The numbers are even bigger in Europe. So, I don't want people to think this is just a low middle income problem. It's actually a global problem. And so it was a very unique opportunity to work on something that had large impact. And that's what excites us about it.
This is phenomenal work, and the numbers actually scare me. If you're saying, almost 8% of the US population, largest GDP,
Yeah.
access to any and all kinds of technology, hub of innovation, and 8% of the population does not have access to basic eye care.
Yeah.
That's astounding.
It's crazy historically, there's some really interesting intricacies of our healthcare system.
Mhm.
And one thing is, if you notice, dentistry or dental care and vision care, as far as insurance, they're always outside of your main insurance, right? You have medical insurance.
Yes.
And for some reason, I don't understand, a long time ago, vision and dental care were looked at as wellness,
Hmm.
and they become out of pocket. And they tend to be more in the high resource areas of cities. And so there are a lot of these deserts. And so, it's surprising. This could be elderly folks who are in a nursing home, who are
Mhm.
bedridden. This could be folks in prison, schools. This could be low-income areas, places that are serviced by federally qualified health centers that don't have enough eye doctors. But this is going to also be the busy tech professional in California or Southern California, right? Like, who's just too busy to go get the eye exam that they're supposed to get every year or two, and keep putting it off and putting it off because it's not convenient. So yeah, it's shocking, but it has all kinds of ramifications. And one number I didn't say, but the UN and a bunch of other kind of the leading folks in global health and eye care have estimated that the economic impact to the global economy is $411 billion per year.
Wow.
And if you just spend $5 per these billion people, for $5 billion, you'd solve a $400 billion problem, but it still doesn't happen.
That's a massive return on your investment, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about, there's obviously a lot of challenges here,
Yeah.
but there's a huge opportunity at the same time.
Yeah.
As a business, as you're looking through, cutting across all of these challenges and coming up with a solution, what's the one big challenge you are facing as a business?
Yeah. So I think the two biggest challenges, I'll give you two. You're getting double your money's worth.
There you go.
So one is, because optometry and optical retail are not in the traditional healthcare sphere, traditional healthcare investors don't really have a thesis on it. And we're in an industry that's kind of generally slow to adopt technology. And so even the big strategic players in this space are slow to make tech bets compared to other aspects of healthcare. Or if you look at the software tech industry, where if they see that you're a startup and you have a solution that they want or that could be helpful, they want to give you the resources to accelerate that and impact the market as a whole. So that's kind of one. The second was, it took a long time to get recognition. And I'm not talking about recognition in terms of praise, but, when you're in a medical field, you're in a field that has a lot of academics, you kind of have to earn your stripes before people started paying attention to your technologies and your results. And that took a long time. We were at MIT, we were there for 3 years, we spun out. And it really took about 6 years, 6.5 years, doing 16 clinical studies and randomized controlled trials and publishing high impact papers and starting to do global health work all over the world before the larger players really took note. We would talk to them, they weren't that interested, or in the early days, or they sat back and wanted to see, could you scale, could you have impact? And so it took a long time. And why does that matter? Because it does make your path a little slower and harder. You often, as an entrepreneur, think, hey, if I can, collaborate with Nitin Bay, then I'm going to shorten my time to market, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to scale bigger. And so that, in one way, you could say created a challenge, but it also created an opportunity. We had to focus on the fundamentals, and we had to kind of do things the right way. And now when we represent our work, when people use our technology, there's so much more rapport and confidence in us and the technologies and solutions we build. And so we've been able to, in a weird way, because of this, instead of hype, and we've built a brand name that is actually quite robust, and people say, hey, you guys are leading tech innovators in this industry that has a lot of big players. But it came from just, having to put your head down and work hard. And I guess I skipped one of your earlier questions, so I'll come back to it. What is our scale of impact and growth? So we launched our technology after 3 years at MIT and 4.5 years as a company. We did it mostly with grants and almost very little, a little angel funding. Mm-hmm. And we had done about 6 clinical studies on 2,000 patients in India, Spain, and the US. Mm-hmm. Since launch in early 2019, so we're talking about 3.5 years now at this point. Mm-hmm. Now our technology has been used on somewhere between 4 and 5 million people across 30 countries. We now have distribution in 50 countries. It's used by large NGOs and governments and ministries of health. In fact, it's being really heavily adopted in India and now starting to be deployed in Africa with big NGOs and parts of Asia. But it's also used by the for-profit optical retail industry because it has the technology we've built, which is called QuickSee. It's a handheld wavefront aberrometer. It's been validated to be the most accurate device of its kind on the market. And, so we're even used by the for-profit side. We're used by optometrists who just use it in their clinic, but we're also used by optometrists and ophthalmologists who go to prisons and school screenings and things like that, who want to move outside of their clinic and provide access to care. It's used by hospital systems like Arvind Eye Hospital and the Veterans Affairs. And one cool thing that we didn't expect when we started, it's now used by the space program on pre and post-flight testing of space crew and space tourists. So this last year, it's been used on 2 different flights, and that was kind of publicly announced. And NASA, because of the long-term mission to Mars and trying to understand how the body changes in space, are very interested in the changes that happen in the eye. And all the data to date was always on astronauts, which is a very homogeneous, in a way, population. They're very unique. And now with space tourism, they have an opportunity to get on the general public, the very wealthy general public that can go afford to go up in space. And, that's a very cool thing. Another aspect of how our technology is being used in a bit of validation. And we've steadily been growing despite COVID because we bring value to these stakeholders around the world. And and so, we're starting to have the impact we want. And then I guess because of some of these large scale programs we're folded into in India and around the world, we're on track to the technology being used on around 60 million people in the next 2-3 years. And then, and that might sound impressive, but I'll be humble. If the problem is 1 to 2 billion people, 5 billion, 5 million is a drop in the bucket. So we still have a long ways to go.
Hey, but, just knowing you and the scale and the pace at which you work, it's a snowball effect, right? So you've started rolling, starting to make a dent, and these are amazing numbers, right? To have that patience to kind of stay diligently focused on the task at hand, despite facing several no's. So let me bring this back to the challenge question, right? I'm curious to hear, you're in a very interesting space. You're not a traditional startup. You're not a not-for-profit either. So you're led by the mission and the vision to help people. How's that creating an impact, good or bad, when it comes to fundraising?
Yeah. So one thing I want to do is step back and make sure to thank all the advisors, my co-founders and team, right? I don't want this to be seen as, I came up with the mission statement. In fact, when we're spinning out of MIT, the founders were sitting around a table asking ourselves, do we even want to spin out? We said yes. And then the second question by one of my co-founders, who's now a professor at Johns Hopkins, he said, what do we want to be known for in 10 years? We want to be known for more impact, and let's say less money. We wanted to make money, but let's say make it binary. Or do we want to be more money, less impact? And of course, me with my Indian mind that's always thinking in the gray spaces, not black and white, was like, we can do both. And he said, no, let's make it binary. And that really clarified the mission. And we all happen to say, yeah, we want to be known. We're biomedical engineers. We go into industry and make money. But it's not often you get to work on a problem that has a potential to have impact in this many dimensions of life and around the globe, high and low resource settings. So we said, we want to be known for more impact. And of course, We want to have it be sustainable and profitable and grow. And so how does that, now that you have that context, how does that affect fundraising? So we've had situations where prominent VCs have said, hey, I'll give you a lot of money if you kind of try to go disrupt doctors.
Right.
I'll write you a check right now, because they think in this disruptive mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, we're all trained as health researchers, biomedical engineers, and we understand that's not how you have health impact.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is not taxis, it's not other things. And even those business models have not really become sustainable, these always, disrupt everything kind of thing. And it's really about building tools and improving the system, working with doctors, giving them tools, hospital systems, healthcare systems. And so this mission statement, this North Star, even though those were bootstrapping years, we're surviving off of grants and we, doing crazy things like skipping lunch every day or eating, the snacks in the incubator center. It was very easy to just say, no, that's not, you're not changing our mission. You're not. And, that's come across multiple times. And so that does close some doors, but in the end, you realize those viewpoints are not how to have success in this space. So bringing those kind of investors would have just been misaligned, and it wouldn't have necessarily helped us have this kind of long-term impact. So, it did make fundraising harder in a way. We would not just take money from anyone. That being said, not all VCs are bad, right? And there are a lot of really great ones, and we've been fortunate to work with a few really sophisticated ones on the West Coast and in Europe who are digital health and health disparity mission oriented, but profit focused as well. And they help us round that out, but in a way that works within the healthcare system. So that's how it's made it hard, and that's, let's say, not fundraising, but team building, right? Sometimes you come across that really all-star and you're just like, wow, but you realize they want to do it because of just, let's say, compensation, or they're thinking in that dimension only. And that has helped us find this strong team of advisors and just this great, amazing team that are spread across the world, but mostly in Boston and in Madrid, who are aligned with the mission. And that makes, they enjoy coming to work despite all the ups and downs. And so having that strong mission statement might make your path a little longer or harder, but I think in a different way makes it more clear and easy, if that makes sense.
Clarity over certainty any day.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's flip the switch and talk about the biggest or the most exciting opportunity you're targeting right now.
So we've been working on new technologies for the last few years. We built this great technology, Quixie, but we don't want to stop there. There's other aspects to improve it upon, and there's ways to keep making it adopted more in all these settings. And so one thing that's unique about us is because we started off in these hard settings in the US and in global health settings, we had to make technology that worked well in the hands of these non-experts. And that gave us our team real insight and deeper insight than others had on how to make technologies that can scale even in more interesting ways. And so that's what we're working on. And that's what I'm excited about, because I think we're going to keep pushing the envelope. And we just published in Nature Scientific Reports a couple months ago, which is not usual for like a medical device company. But the stuff we're bringing and we're going to be bringing to market is just really exciting. And it just improves the vision exam, improves access, reduces costs. It, keeps the healthcare system, the eye doctors involved. And so I think we're going to come up with a really beautiful example of how you can work with different stakeholders and be impactful and be, successful as a business. And it's not just limited to the US market or the European market. It's going to be worldwide. So that is what really excites me in the next phase of where we're going.
In addition to that global impact, what I'm personally excited about is, I remember you'd mentioned this to me, you guys are taking a lot of effort in making sure the user experience for the experts that are using it is simplified. So the training is quicker and easier. So I really love that holistic view and thinking through the details to not just make the tech, but make it
Yeah.
useful for the people
Yeah.
that are actually on it.
And that's the thing. And it's, we weren't the first to come up with this idea. It's very ingrained in, I think, the software tech space, but in the apps, right? Usability, user experience. But in the medical device space, I think it's there, but a little less.
Yeah.
But usually in the global health space, it's even less, I think. And it comes from humility, right? You spend all this time, you do these studies in all these countries, you like work with all these experts, you take 6 years and you launch and then you realize it's having impact, but there's a but. There's a few buts. It's great, but this is great, but that. So, if you're humble, if you're coachable, if you really are passionate about the impact, you're not going to ignore your customer base. You're not going to ignore that feedback from your partners. And you say, hey, these are opportunities to improve. Right? Improve the algorithms, improve the software, improve the usability, improve the ergonomics, improve everything. So that's the really cool thing about PlenOptika. A lot of med device companies are very sales team heavy and few engineers. Like the ratios, and we're inverted. We're 3/4 scientists and engineers, and 1/4, commercial team. And this commercial team, though, is experienced and they're having all this impact. But we're continuously dedicated to R&D. And I like to thank the NIH, the U.S. Indo Science Endowment Fund, the TRISH program, which is Translational Research Institute of Space Health, grants in Europe. These mechanisms, like the SBIR mechanism with the NIH, have allowed us to continuously do R&D and push the envelope of impact.
It's amazing to bring the whole ecosystem together.
Yeah.
Because you have that clarity and you have that vision, and to be able to drive the results from that. Let's, as we look forward in terms of the opportunities, let's look back a little bit. In your own journey, you've had some successes and some that probably weren't qualified as successes, and we'll say the F word. There have been some failures. I'm interested to hear one of each, one success story, brag a little bit, not really like you, but go for the stars. And then one that, became a lesson that you drew upon and, helped you change for the better.
Yeah, I'll start out again. I'll give you twice your money's worth. I'll give you two kind of learnings that were hard learnings, but important. When you have really smart co-founders, really smart advisors, really smart and experienced partners, sometimes, and this is true of professional life and personal life, sometimes, you can be a great communicator, but it's hard to have uncomfortable conversations, right? And you bottle things up or you don't fully express things. And that causes lack of clarity, that causes tension, and causes resentment sometimes. So, that is somewhere where me personally, and I think even my team and even our advisors and everything, right? It's something you always work on. And, I think a lot of times, right, in our Indian culture, we avoid conflict in conversations. That's a deep part of our DNA. And it comes out of a deep place of respect, actually, for the other person, which is a beautiful thing. But if you don't also express kind of what you see is wrong and stuff, right, that causes these inefficiencies, right? So that was a lesson, it's not, if you have these conversations from a place of respect, empathy, compassion, you put yourself in the other person's shoes as well, theory of mind, you can have these and be productive. And it's not bad and it's not uncomfortable, and I'm not the first to say that, people have written books on this but it's definitely something I would share. And the second is, as an entrepreneur and as a founder, right? You can take things personally, every setback, every, competition you don't win, or every no from an investor. And look, like great athletes, use this as fuel, right? Michael Jordan, right? Draymond Green, who I love, right? He, in the first couple of years, he would always recite the 34 people who got picked before him, right? Aaron Rodgers, who's a Cal Bear, but so many more, right? And who did that. And, but then you're defining your progress by these kind of negative and is outside. So, what I've kind of learned is you really gotta that it has to come from within, but it doesn't need an external fuel source. It has to be your own light shining and shines bright. And so you need to learn to not get too high and not get too low, you know, like, and not take things personally, right? It's very easy to, because you're putting everything you have into this startup, and someone's saying very flippantly without looking at the deeper story, hey, this is never going to work. Hey, you know, it's very easy to take it personal. And my advice to my friends who are entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs I mentor, and the translational health people I mentor is, you know, they just don't have all the data, right? They don't see the world you do, and have that framework, and take the good out of it, be coachable, but it doesn't define you, but you define your own positive energy towards it, and just don't get too high and too low. Don't take it personal. So that's 2 long-winded answers for, you know, the F word failure, which are opportunities for growth. And I think for success, it's that we've been able to stay true to our mission. And because we took this view of impact, we made sure we could come up with a cross-subsidization model that worked in high resource settings and low resource settings around the world that have had large impact to date. I'm really proud of the team and advisors we've built, because, you know, sometimes we even like talk to advisors, say, hey, you know, we don't have a lot to compensate you with, but we want to. And so many of them say no. They say, I just want to help you because I like what you guys do, and I like your DNA, and I like, you know, I'm aligned with you guys. Like, you know, it's not about the compensation, why I'm here. And that makes you realize you're doing something that, you know, even others are passionate about. The team members who come and join us, they're just awesome. So I'm proud of that. And then proud of, you know, I think what happens a lot in the startup world is our company's going to do blah. And it's just us, right? And I think in healthcare, it's really about a dynamic ecosystem of stakeholders. And I think if you really want to be successful, can you bring them all to the table? Can you work with all of them in different capacities, right? And that's going to make a longer term success, and really hard to do. It's a bit of luck. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of patience. And, you know, the scale we're starting to achieve, and we hope to continue to achieve, is not just because we're working hard, but it's because these other stakeholders are all involved, whether they're distribution partners, clinical partners, big NGOs, governments, you know, researchers, commercial, you know. And I'm that I appreciate, you know, it wasn't easy, but it is crucial to success and to continued impact.
And kudos to you. You know, you kind of said it, but I'll point it again. In the startup world, that's unheard of, right? To bring people together, to listen, to understand, hear their point, and then say, yes, let's move together. And so kudos to you and your team for being able to continuing to do that, especially in this highly regulated environment where things are not easy to move. People are not willing to listen and change, right? Change is most often the most difficult thing to make happen.
You know, we've said this, and a couple of our advisors who are big players in healthcare in the US have said this. You know, there's this motto of move fast and break stuff, or whatever that is, right? That doesn't work in healthcare. You don't get to break stuff. You don't get that chance, and you should not, right? And so, yeah, it's kind of, we don't follow that motto. We follow a different motto.
So talking about models, frameworks, and lessons brings us to my favorite part of the show, the one-line life lessons.
Oh, yeah.
Would love to hear a few from you.
Yeah. So let me start general, and then I'll kind of work my way down. And I love this question. I was thinking about it over dinner, and had a lot of fun to think about how to take this. And I hope this is useful for everyone. The first would be, you know, set your mission and your North Star and your values, right? And the founders need to be aligned with that. You need to make sure you work with advisors and team members and investors who are aligned with that. But you have to always challenge that too, because otherwise you can just create a cult. right? And you can be misguided and only surround yourselves with yes people.
Mhm.
So that's not what I mean, but you need to define your values and your mission. The kind of second would be take a long-term view of what success means for you as a founding group, as success for your stakeholders, your shareholders, for your organization, and build a strong foundation.
Mhm.
One of our very cool West Coast Bay Area VCs, we're at dinner, we were talking about this, and after the dinner, right when they invested, they sent me 2 books. It was based on some of the conversation, and one of the books was The Score Takes Care of Itself, which was Coach Walsh of the 49ers, in the 80s when they won 4 Super Bowls. And it's really about, you prepare for practice and you execute practice. It's that high level of excellence, and the game will take care of itself. Coach Popovich from the Spurs is kind of like that, or Coach K from, the Blue Devils. And I really encourage that. I guess these are not one-liners. These are actually like small paragraphs, but
No.
the third would be no matter how talented and experienced you are,
Mhm.
seek out great advisors, mentors, board of directors, and be coachable, right? It kind of goes back to our Indian philosophy of gurus, and whether you think it's, you can think of it like in 3 dimensions, like the guru, the advisor is either opening your perspective to something, teaching you something, and that changes your path and hopefully makes your path more efficient. The fourth would be, it's all about people. And what I mean is, your team and your partners. So pick good ones, pick folks who are aligned. And the fifth, I would say, coming back to don't get too high, don't get too low, stay focused on the goal. I remember I was reading Phil Jackson's biography way back, like in the mid-90s. I was in high school, and I think it was like after his first or second championship, there's a picture of him. They had just won the championship. His feet are on the table. I think he's having a glass of wine or a cigar, and there's 2 trophies, right? And everyone's like, oh, and he enjoyed it. That I think he said something, if I'm remembering correctly, for an hour, a couple hours that evening, and then it was back to the process.
Yep.
That's the thing. It's a process. It's a long-term journey, and you need to be focused and fulfilled and embrace the process, not obsessed just with the endpoint, and because you just keep extending the journey and going and going. So, and the only way you can do that and have that mental, emotional reserve is don't let the highs get too high and the lows get too lows.
So true and so very well said. Shivang,
And
this
sorry,
is
they weren't one-liners.
no, they are, and we'll extract them. We'll create the gist, and for our audience, we have an entire collection at onlinelifelessons.com, and Shivang's will be on there pretty soon, and also available anywhere you guys socialize digitally. And Shivang, thank you once again for being with us here today while you're on a worldwide whirlwind trip. So we really appreciate you making the time to be with us. Congratulations for the journey so far, and kudos to you and your team for what you have achieved, and really excited for what's to come in the near future.
Thank you very much, Nathan May. It was lovely to be on, and I love this show. And congrats on how you built it up over the years as well. You're season 7 now, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Glad to have the love and all the appreciation that we get. And thanks again, Shivang. Really appreciate it.
And one last, we got to end on a joke. I'm very jealous of your hair.
Well, we'll make a trade. How about that?
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.